Bobby, are you also in New York?
Yes, I am right next to Patrick.
Oh,
My
cool.
right next to. We're in the
But
same.
I have family on the East Coast, but like my dad's from Brooklyn, and my uncle lives in Edison, and my cousin lives in a place in New Jersey that's right near the New York border, but I can't remember the name.
Hoboken.
Sorry?
Hoboken.
I don't know. I don't
All right,
think it's
I'm gonna go live,
oh,
and I
we'll
started
talk.
recording. Are you ready, Freddy's?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And we are live. Yay! Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm so, we were just talking for everyone who's catching in with us. We're all going to introduce ourselves a little bit just so you can get to know who you're going to be spending this hour with. One of the reasons that I put together this webinar and wanted to offer it with couples is because so much has been going on in the world with the pandemic and with couples issues, and sometimes we all just get a little depleted and need some additional support. So I'm extremely honored and excited that these panelists have taken the time to join me today on well, here it's a little cloudy, but it's still a Saturday, so I'm just gonna rock with that. So for those of you who know me, I'm Patrick Monette. I'm a mental health counselor in Plattsburgh, New York. And I work with individuals, but also couples as well, doing couples workshops, seminars, and different things like that, just for couples to be able to work on their issues and improve their communication. So, Marcia, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. My name is Marcia Vickman, and I am a licensed clinical professional counselor in Chicago, Illinois. I'm also a certified EFT therapist and supervisor. And also I am the president-elect and the training director of the Chicago EFT community. So very happy to be here, very excited to talk with you and everyone.
Awesome, we're so glad you could join us. Bobbi Terri, hello neighbor. For those of you who don't, Bobbi and I are office neighbors.
Thank you. This is the way we get paid, right?
Yeah,
Online.
connection.
I'm Bobbi Terri. I'm a licensed clinical social worker in private practice in Plattsburgh, New York. And I specialize in working with adolescents, adults, and do work with couples and families.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for being with us, Bobbi. And Jason, hello from California. Hopefully it's sunnier there.
Yeah, not yet, but it will be. So I'm JasonLinder. I have a private practice in Scripps, San Diego, so it's northeast San Diego. My practice I've been mainly attracting a lot of EMDR individuals. I don't have that many, I only have 2 couples now on my caseload. But Patrick knows that I studied EMDR and EFT in my dissertation recently for my PsyD research, and that was a really fun study. And that's, I think, my most passionate clinical interest is how EMDR and EFT therapy can combine with couples. So yeah, I'm happy to be here too.
We're so glad you could join us. And once again, I do owe you donuts for this and coffee for being, you win for the earliest commitment to this. So.
Thanks, Patrick.
And so, one of the things that we were talking about before we started the live feed was about how one of the things that moved me with couples is I see, and I don't know about your experiences, but couples really get neglected a lot of times. And one of the things, even when I'm teaching in the university and we're talking about relationships, the students will say, well, it's so hard to know how to have a healthy relationship. And, one of the questions that I ask them is, where did they get their role models? Where did they learn how to be in a relationship? And when I ask that, it's such a startling question of who modeled how to be in a relationship with me or for me. And I think all of us on this discussion today address couples issues in a really beautiful, different, and unique way. So what we've done is, for the people who are watching, is we put together some questions that I'm just going to throw out for anyone who's watching live. If you have any comments or anything that you want to add to it, please just let us know. So what I'll be doing is asking a question, and then we'll just go around once and just kind of give our feedback. And then if anyone wants to piggyback on that discussion, we'll just kind of roll with it. So one of the questions that was sent in, and I'm just going to read it off as it was sent to me, is my husband and I have been married for many years and now are very busy raising a busy active family. It's been quite hectic with the pandemic as I've been working from home and homeschool teaching during the pandemic. One of the constant arguments that my husband and I have had has been about wanting children. We have 3 children already. This pandemic has been hell for me. I love my husband and my kids, but being stuck at home for months has changed everything for me. My husband still wants to have more kids, and I feel that I am done having kids. Plus, to be honest, this entire pandemic has scared me, and I struggle knowing how to keep my children safe, and the idea of bringing more children into this world sends me over the edge. I love my children and my husband more than anything, but I am tired, stressed, and feel alone in all of this. And so I think, when I can speak for myself, is when I first got this, my heart just goes out to this family because there's a lot going on. And as everyone introduced themselves, I was just thinking what an incredible different approach that we all can have to this, with the idea of how to be there for that person, how to support them, and how to support the relationship. And I'm just wondering how you each would respond to this request for help.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that, one thing that's really important is to hear what she's saying, to really listen to her, because, it's at this point, it really, from my perspective, is not only about having that other child, but really where's this woman at? How is she experiencing things? So starting from that point, starting from that place, being able to explore what has been happening. It's, she's overwhelmed. She's feeling very stressed. Is she feeling disconnected?
Mm-hmm.
How can they work together, and how can they communicate as a couple to be present beyond what it means to have another child, but just let's start in the moment. So that's one piece.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that a lot of millennials especially are pivoting away from having human children and are having more pets, especially during this time. And it's sad. There are a lot of grandparents, especially who are more like higher risk and more vulnerable to the coronavirus, and they haven't been able to see their grandchildren for for months. And so I wonder if this, especially from an emotionally focused couple therapy perspective, which maybe Marcia and Patrick can say, Marcia and Patrick can say more, but I wonder if having children, or like having a 4th child or not, how that would fit into their negative cycle, and what blocks them having productive dialogues and like compassionate, respectful, collaborative conversations and compromise, which you just have to do in a family, and how it feels to just be all kind of stuck in the quarantine or whatever other stressors that they're going through. Mm-hmm. There was more that I wanted to say, but I'm blanking, so I'll let Marcia or Patrick take over for me.
All right, I'll go next. Yeah, Patrick, you said there's a lot going on. There is a lot going on in this situation, right? And what has been required of parents with children at home during this pandemic has been absolutely impossible. It's impossible to have a full-time job and be a teacher, and a homeowner and a spouse and all of that. It's just impossible. So you have to really address that level of stress. And so there's so much that I hear in this question. It's just, this person is overwhelmed with all these responsibilities and feeling very alone. So a conversation needs to be had with her husband about, can he help? Can he hear these emotions that she's experiencing? Can he hear her pain? Right? Can he hear her fears about bringing another child into this world and all these emotions? So she needs to be able to share with him from her heart all the emotions that are coming up from her, so that he can really find some compassion, right? And he as well needs to be able to share with her from his heart about what it means for him that he wants to have another child, right? Why is that such a deep need for him? And what happens for him if he doesn't have another child? Right? What's that like? And so from there, if they can speak with each other from the heart, then they can find compassion from one another. And that's where the compromise and resolution comes from.
Absolutely.
Right. And I think one of the things that we were talking about a few minutes ago that, Marcia, you just said, it kind of took my breath away the way you said it was, you know, in EFT, it's like, it's about slowing down. And for me, I don't know if it's just my my biological, but I'm like Speedy Gonzalez sometimes. I'm like, all right, solution, let's go. Let's solve that problems. Like, let's pull this apart and fix. And one of the things about learning EFT for me has been that beauty of, we got to slow this train down. And I agree with all of you of, you know, there's that overall ribbon of the trauma of the pandemic and how it's affected. And what I have been finding is how it's bringing up unresolved issues and fears and insecurities and unresolved resentments. And on top of, like you were saying, the impossible tasks of, now I have to work a full-time job and be a teacher to my kids and protect my kids and protect myself and my partner. And I think coming in and first of all, I think anyone that reaches out for any type of therapy is so brave, because they're saying, I just need that support. I'm struggling. I'm drowning. I see the red flags that I need someone to pull me out again. And I think my mind just jumps to when couples come in, especially with so much going on, sometimes they'll put it on the table and they're like, all right, tell me what to do. tell me which direction. And, you know, with all of your responses, I just get such an overwhelming feeling of compassion for this person and for the partner and for the family of, we're all in unknown territories here. Let's just slow the train down and make sure we take this apart gently and with compassion, so all of our needs can get expressed and met in a healthy way.
Yes.
Yeah. And maybe we can piggyback on how they did successfully manage to have three children and what they've been doing well to navigate decisions around those first three children, around if perhaps they were on board for those first three, but not the fourth one, or perhaps they weren't, but how they have been able to listen and be compassionate, caring, and make space. And then, of course, especially if they go to see Marcia or Patrick, an EFT person, to really slowing down the emotion, the music of their dance during this new ballroom of the pandemic. Yeah.
I think, you know, I know we talk about like the stimulus checks and all of that jazz, but I do think parents need some kudos here, because my heart just goes out to them of, you know, I read in one article where someone was saying how difficult it is for children to have that relationship of, hey, you're mom or dad, and now all of a sudden you're my teacher. And that's a really different dynamic. And for parents to see their children in a whole other relationship, I just kind of want to give them a hug sometimes. It's really, I just feel for people who are going through that. It's really difficult. And I just want to say, we got a shout out. Jason and I know Dr. Jamie Marich is joining us through Facebook Live just to say hello. Hello, everyone. So hi, Jamie. Thanks for popping in. And for everyone else who's joining us today.
That's exciting.
Hi, Jamie.
Yeah.
Being able to, I think that's one of the things too that I see with couples is there is usually that blame, is you're the one that's doing something bad or not doing something good, and we need to go get the referee to tell me I'm right and you're wrong and to fix it so we can be happy.
Well, and
Patrick,
go ahead.
I'll say it's about that scorecard, right? You know, the piece when there's that keeping a scorecard and staying at different ends of the ring and really being able to step back and hold your own emotional response in reserve. You know, you're kind of holding that here so you can take that breath and So your primitive emotional response, which you might be really to reduce that reactivity and to become more responsive. You know, it's really difficult to do.
Yes. That scorecard is so, and it's funny, one of the questions sometimes I ask clients is, you know, I'll ask them, you know, have you ever been in an argument? And we all laugh. It's like, yes, of course. And I said, have you ever wanted to win an argument? And of course we do. And then that painful question is, when you win that argument, what are you losing?
Yeah.
And I think it goes into that I see that vicious cycle so often of, I have to win and I don't care if you lose, because it's that, I don't know if any of you ever see that of, it's so heartbreaking because you see these two individuals who really love each other, but then they get into that vicious dance.
Yeah. Yeah, the winning an argument, no one really wins. It's a Pyrrhic victory.
And that process of blame is because those emotional reactions take so much time, or take so little time. They happen so quickly. The person says, you, my partner, are responsible for making me feel pain inside.
Yes.
But I can't be in touch with my pain inside. That's way too vulnerable and way too quick. So I'm already finding the solution to what I think is going to relieve my pain. And that's, if you stop doing X or you start doing Y, I'll feel so much better. But the partner can't hear the part that's the pain. All they hear is the criticism, the blame, or the order. Right. And so again, it's about slowing them down to find out what is that pain inside that they're trying to relieve. Right. And being able to have them share that with their partner so their partner can understand.
Right.
And Marcia, you're also saying, right, that that partners aren't responsible for each other's emotions, right? That he makes me feel this way is, right? Can you say a little bit more about that? Because
Sure.
I liked what you were.
Yeah, the partner triggers the emotion
Yeah.
in the individual, right? And that emotion needs to be responded to. But the genuine emotion, the primitive primary part of the emotion, the vulnerable part, needs to be responded to, but no one can respond to it if the person is already in defensive mode or attack mode. Right? So it's about slowing it down and getting to that primary emotion inside, because that's where all the pain is, and that's where all the healing needs to be.
And I've seen how difficult it is for people to not want to continue the argument when it's happening. It's really, I know in the EFT we talk about like the pursuer and withdrawer and, different things like that but it, that, well, if we're having an argument, we need to resolve this right now. And then you have the other person who's trying to escape because they don't want to lose control. And then that battle of learning, oh, wait, we can talk about this when we're calm, but they get so scared that they just think, if we don't resolve this now, I won't be okay. It won't be safe. Any other feedback on that question? Someone did say, Tabitha said, oh, great question. Yes, I agree, Tabitha. It's hard, I think in almost all of these questions, you can have the element of how the pandemic has changed people and how it affects the way we deal with things. So, and someone did ask another question. I just put my email out there. If someone wants to send a question that they don't maybe on Facebook want their identity known, you can just send it to patrickmonette13@gmail.com, and I'll be checking my email as we continue with the live conversation. Okay, so let's go to another question. It almost feels like you're opening up a little bit of a fortune cookie of like, what's going to come out now, like with different struggles that people are going with. This one, it says, my boyfriend and I have been together for almost 3 years. Everything has been going great except for the bedroom. I honestly have almost zero sex drive, and he could do it anytime, anywhere. I have tried to be a quote-unquote good girlfriend and try to make him happy, but I know that he isn't. I know that he watches a lot of porn, which makes me even more uncomfortable because I never want to be like one of those girls. We have gotten into arguments about the porn, but then I just shut down and stop talking about it and hope it'll go away. I just am not that much of a sexual person. I never have been. I don't know what to do. I am scared to talk to him about it because it usually turns into a heated argument, and I'm really afraid he'll break up with me over this. I can't talk to any of my friends about it because they all think I'm crazy, because in every other way, he's a great guy, and I can see a bright future for us. Except for this giant, sexless elephant in the room. Am I crazy for not wanting to have sex? I don't know about you, but it's funny how often clients will come in for couples issues and sex is like the giant elephant, but they never want to talk about it. And, I've learned in my own, in school and in our trainings, we're like, well, we have to meet the client where we're at and all of this. But sometimes I feel like you have to say, all right, where's the sex? Where's the intimacy? Where's that connection? And I think this presents a whole barrel of issues going on.
Well, the interesting thing is the actual question that this particular person is asking is, am I crazy for not wanting to have sex? But that's not really the question.
Right.
Right? That's not really the issue.
Right.
The issue is this partner feels very uncomfortable about something that is very important to her partner, and she doesn't know how to talk about it. Right? So she shuts down and doesn't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to be talked about.
Right.
Right? So that's really the part. And the other part is that she feels very vulnerable that her partner is going to leave her based on this issue, right? So there's some insecurity there in the commitment and the strength of that relationship. So again, that's an issue.
Yeah.
Right? So how can they have a conversation about feeling secure, about needs being met? And for her, sounds like a sense of, to satisfy him, it requires her to betray herself on some level, right? It cannot feel safe, right?
Yeah.
The other things that strike me is there a medical issue here, right? You have to rule out a medical issue before you deal with anything related to anything sexual or medical in a relationship.
I think to jump in on that piece you're talking about, Marcia, that is, if there's that level of discomfort, right? What is her primitive emotional response? Her reactive piece, and hers might be to withdraw, to submit, or to walk away from that. So the emotion is kind of driving her, as opposed to staying with that discomfort and moving through that discomfort to really explore what is this piece about, right? And so I think whether it's the pornography, whether it's the expectation, but for her to explore that piece, to sit with it and be able to have a really comfortable dialogue. And how do you get to that place, right? How can they really talk about intimacy in all aspects, emotional intimacy, sexual intimacy, physical intimacy? And I also agree the medical piece. Is there a medical issue? Making sure that you rule that out, and then being able to sit with, explore that piece for her. All those, the question within the question, the concern within the whole picture.
Yeah, and I'm really curious. Do we know, Patrick, if this issue started during the pandemic, or has this been going on for years with this couple, or for months?
The person who wrote in didn't specify.
Yeah, I'd be curious about how that started, and from the EFT perspective, comparing and contrasting their sexual cycle to their emotional cycle, and how they it's like they have a desired discrepancy, but it feels, the way that the questions formulated, it feels like there's more emotional stuff than there is sexual stuff. Like something about their dynamic and their pattern is kind of stymieing her sexual desire, and then increasing his, and it's a pretty difficult, pretty extreme pursue, withdraw, sexual issue going on, but it feels really emotionally driven, more than sexually driven.
Yeah.
So
I agree. The one thing that I see so often is that's popping in my head is it's usually never about sex. Like Marcia's saying, that question, it's, when what I read too is I see the EFT component, but I also see the EMDR of, when because sex is such an intimate, personal private thing, and so many people's rights and privacies have been violated in one way or another, or pressure, or even with that element of shame, that if you want sex or you want to do this, you should be ashamed of your body, or you should be ashamed of those desires. And being able to look at that of, I thought the same thing of, is there a medical issue going on? Is this person, some people have different sex drives, but also my EMDR comes on, is there some sort of unresolved trauma here that might be popping up?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that opens up that really good discussion too, is when you're doing couples therapy or when you're seeking couples therapy, knowing that it might be the couple's issue that bring you into the door, but that's not necessarily where you need to go. Because sometimes one or both of the partners, and I'm sure you all can jump in on this, is sometimes some individual work might be really needed.
Yeah.
And I don't know what your experiences are with that. Of the couple work, you can either do it, or sometimes you can put it on hold because there might be some individual work that needs to be tended to.
Yeah, I think that on that note, Patrick, that doing a attachment history questionnaire and or a sexual history questionnaire could be helpful, especially with the female partner, right, who's currently having a lower sex drive, and seeing if she masturbates and what their sex life was before and how her sex life has been with previous partners, assuming that there's no medical issue. But I think that you're right, Patrick, that we would find a lot with those having even one or two individual sessions if that were a couple client. Yeah.
What Marcia and Bobbi, what do you feel about that? Do you ever struggle? I know sometimes for me it's hard to make that decision or to bring it up to the couple of, hey, there is some individual work here. Do you ever struggle with that, or do you ever see resistance from couples from that?
Bobbi, you want to take that?
I think it's really kind of part of the history, right? So when I'm working with a couple initially, when I move through some of that history with them, it really is a kind of part of how we weave that into the relationship. So in a particular case like this, I think it would be really important how you delicately handle that, so the people feel respected and heard, in terms of really exploring that. In this case, how looking at the piece of potential trauma, which I think, Marcia, when you're talking about that to me that really resonated, that there really may be this component. I think it's just important because some couples become, I think it's a little bit difficult when you talk about doing individual work. They may feel a bit guarded, or as though somehow they are the problem in the relationship, as opposed to they both share this process, and it helps me get a better understanding of not only their own history, but what they bring to the relationship.
I agree with all of that. I think it's common where couples are also in individual therapy with other therapists, and that they can work together to help the couple, right? Help the couple deal with things that are more individual in nature, but also help them to feel more confident, being more vulnerable in the couples therapy session, to help slow them down individually, so that when they are in the couple session, that they are in a better place to be able to be vulnerable and open, take those risks.
Yeah, one of the themes in my research was, after interviewing 13 therapists about it who do EFT and EMDR, was they were doing some individual EMDR sessions with couples that they were seeing, but they would, like, there was a theme about capping it at 2 or 3 individual sessions, and making sure that every single individual session was focused on couple issues and doesn't go into the realm usually of individual therapy, because that can get really messy. According to most participants, not all, but it can get really messy when we try to do individual and couple therapy at the same time with the same couple.
Right.
I think that's an important point, that when you're working with a couple, if you see them individually, in context of the couple's work, versus referring them out to an individual therapist and then working collaboratively with those individual therapists, really to be clear about the nature of what that individual work would look like.
And And I'm going to interrupt just for a quick second because I just wanted to share with you that we have some people watching from Chile today.
Oh,
Nice.
So, saludos a Chile.
cool.
Saludos, and I know I'll just do a quick sound out because I know that Chile's really struggling right now with the pandemic, and I believe most of the cities have been under a mandated quarantine of shutdown and everything. So just thank you for watching us and supporting us, and I hope you're all safe down there, and hopefully it will get resolved quickly. And I had someone who responded about saying that about sex isn't just about sex sometimes, and I have said that before because that is my experience. Could it be just that some people aren't compatible in this department and it's best to cut the losses and move on, or one person will end up compromising a lot? I think that's an excellent question and a great thing to look at. I think sometimes it can be just that. In my experiences, it's usually something emotional.
Mm-hmm.
That's just what I've seen, and it's not all or nothing, but I think like if you've been together like this person for 3 years, they're not just talking about sex.
Mm-hmm.
They're talking about porn, they're talking about expectation, they're talking about shame, they're talking about not being able to be open and vulnerable with their partner, they're not able to put their needs out there. At least that's what I'm taking away from it. So I think sex, sometimes it can be, hey, we're just not on the same page. And that would be a different discussion. But I think in this case, I just see it a little differently. But a really good question. I don't know what the three of you think about that. Sometimes can it just be the sex?
Yeah, I remember a conversation from a few months ago that I had with one of this couples where the male was very just like the question that they had asked us before, very a sexual pursuer. And when we did slow it down a little bit, it came down to that when he's rejected and when his partner doesn't want to have sex with him, it's like he feels really inadequate and not good enough, not attractive, not desired, not loved. But then there were also some other parts of their relationship where I don't want to give too much detail, but where when they had sex, sometimes their sexual positions weren't meshing. Like when she was feeling pleasure, he would go soft because he couldn't feel anything. So there are sometimes sexual issues can also be about compatibility too. But I think that
therapists are amazing resources.
Huh?
And sex therapists are an amazing resource.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Jason.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. I was done.
Ladies, any other feedback or?
Good.
We got it covered. We got it worked out. So hopefully that helps a little bit.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is that human beings are wired to attach, right? We're meant for that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and once we attach, it's really hard to detach.
Yes.
It takes a lot to make a decision to leave a relationship, right? So there's got to be enough that is painful in a relationship to outweigh the positives in order for someone to make a decision to leave.
I agree.
Right?
And I think sometimes that, I was saying it in a little way, I think there is sometimes so much shame in my experiences talking about sex that even having that discussion of saying my needs aren't being met or we're not on the same page, that is so difficult for people to have. Because, we never want to hurt someone and we never want anyone to feel shamed, but we also have that right to feel satisfied in that area. So it goes to that communication and that safety piece of how do we make sure all of our needs are being met, I think is so important.
Yeah.
Any other responses to that?
Yeah, you mentioned shame, right, Patrick? And I would, I remember from my a while ago from my core skills training, through EFT, the trainer was talking about how shame is the one primary emotion that doesn't attract your partner to you, unlike sadness and unlike fear. So I think there's a good conversation to be had about like when one partner is just engrossed and enveloped in their shame, how do you help kind of unearth the sadness and the fear and the more attachment related emotions to help them connect, especially when there's pandemic sexual issues. That kind of popped up for me. I saw some nodding.
Yeah.
What were you all thinking?
Right. Well, the action tendency for shame is disconnection.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Right. So you're right. So it has to be named and it has to be brought up into the therapy so that the couple can see what's happening. When the person goes into shame, they disconnect and their partner can't reach them and they're not reachable.
Yeah. Exactly.
That invisible wall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The invisible.
One of the things too that I always refer, I watch a lot of movies, so I refer a lot of my clients to watch Inside Out, because I don't have
The emotion
the
one.
little emotions, and then it's a really great discussion piece, but it ties in. I think it ties in EFT. I think it ties in traditional therapy. It ties in EMDR, just to look at what happens inside our own brains and hearts when our emotions are not in sync.
Yeah.
And one of the conversations too, going back of there's so many great techniques of being able to check in, and I try to support my couples too, of when we talk about date nights and different things like that, and when we talk about intimacy, to really evolve that, because if there has ever been trauma, I've had some people say when they're going through physical changes, when they're going through cancer treatments or menopause, or some other physical change where sex isn't possible or it's painful, to really develop and evolve that definition of what intimacy is. And I think people get so anxious and so wrapped up, and then that shame comes in of, what if I can't, please my partner? And being able to bring that partner into that dance of saying, it isn't all about sex, and a lot of times it's really about, I just miss you.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I think that as you're talking about that, is really looking at, through the course of a marriage or through the course of a relationship, that you're going to have many relationships throughout that relationship. That it isn't really just who we are in the very beginning, it's who we are throughout the process, and where is our life, and where are we in that process. So the sexual relationship in your 20s, if you meet, and then as you move on, is going to be different than when you're in your 50s. And so it's really being able to, I think, have that point of connection, so you can sit and really hold, when we talk about holding emotional space, being able to recognize our own discomfort, and look at how the relationship has progressed. In particular, pandemic. Pandemic is often a source at which we see those underlying issues kind of become magnified in the relationship. So, really being able to look at, like you said, I think, Jason, earlier, is this something that's existing currently, because, exacerbated by the pandemic, or is this kind of been a continual problem? But that's the same with all relationships, kind of regardless of the pandemic, is how are we through the lifespan of a relationship?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I like what you said about it's one relationship over time is many relationships as people evolve and grow.
And I don't know about you, but I didn't learn that growing up. I learned happily ever after.
Yeah.
I think the first animated film, like I said, I love the movie, was Shrek, because they talked about like marital issues and not wanting to change diapers and, in-laws and, all of those different things. It wasn't just about who's going to get saved from the dragon or the curse. And I think, I've had so many conversations of, that what you're saying, Bobbi, is how important that is you're going to change. And that's a beautiful part of a relationship, and it doesn't have to be negative.
Yeah. On that note, whenever I ask clients, couples, and even friends, colleagues, are there any unexpected positives of the pandemic? Almost everyone can say, like, we are connecting more, and I have more time with my kids. I'm not saying the pandemic is a good thing, But there's always like 100% some interesting silver linings. And I think like a big one that I've seen is more family time, more couple connect time, as long as you're like not always enmeshed and like not always doing everything together all the time. But yeah, that part we could also focus on. I feel
Well,
like
I think that was one of our questions, that more of a shorter one. This pandemic has killed my relationship. All we do is fight. Is there any hope of saving it, or should I just run? And I've seen that as well in some of my professional, but also some of my friend circles. Of this pandemic has pushed us in ways that we were not expecting.
yeah.
Yeah, but to draw on the resilience, right? What are those negative cycles that the couple is getting into? What are those fights about? What's getting triggered? What's the pain that they can't talk about, right? Can they slow it down and be able to talk about it differently, right? Because once we're attached, it's much harder to detach,
Yes.
right? So we're looking for that safety. The fighting is all about the safety. I want the safety, I want the connection, and I don't know how to get it. And all I know how to do is what my instinct tells me to do, and it points me in the wrong direction, but I just keep doing it louder and louder and louder, thinking sometime it'll work, and it doesn't.
Mm.
So EFT is all about relationship repair. So, you know, if that client were coming to me, I would say, let's work on it. Don't cut and run.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, like this question, I wish we had more details, because I would love to know how the relationship was before the pandemic and how they handled disagreements and too much time together. And yeah, it seemed to be their negative cycle seems to be smothering them.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to get them to an EFT or just any couple therapist. Bobby, you look like you were going to say something.
I was just thinking, yes, kind of moving on, that piece Patrick had talked about earlier, which is, you know, in a relationship, whether you have children or you're a couple, the coupled dynamic and being able to nurture that relationship goes down on the bottom of the list. It may be, I need to take care of work or household responsibilities or myself, and I have free time, I want to go and do whatever that I enjoy. So when I ask couples, what do you do together? What do you do to nurture your relationship? How are you present with each other? They might be like, oh, I hadn't really thought of that. Or we don't do as much. So the pandemic has really kind of pushed that issue to the forefront. It's really heightened and put the spotlight on those pieces. So finding those things, Jason, like what can you do to nurture your relationship, to make it playful, to make it fun? You know, creating new activities. We live in the Adirondack Park, so maybe you can go for a hike in the mountains. Maybe you can go kayaking. Maybe you can, you know, encourage each other to develop kind of a new hobby, but how can you really nurture that connection, creating that emotional comfort and safety, and, you know, that playfulness in the relationship where you want to connect, you want to attach, you want to, you know, spend that, not only spend time together, but the more you could do that, right, the greater your ability to be vulnerable in that relationship.
Yeah.
I had someone who just wrote in a question asking about what we're talking about, is if any of you have any insight of how you would approach these things when there's a cultural difference within the couple. And I think that's a beautiful and really great question.
Yeah. I would be curious about what cultural difference. I mean, me and you, Patrick, talked about how we both speak Spanish, right? And we've lived in Latin America. And my wife is from Mexico. She actually moved here to marry me almost 3 years ago. So we've been having so many different cultural and language challenges. We have no more detail on that question, right? Just cultural differences.
Yes. Yeah.
And there's so many different ones. Just there's times where like I'm trying to communicate love or affection or caring, and my wife interprets it as like me criticizing or and I'm like sometimes so confused about how like my clear intention. I wish I could come up with an example no one's coming to mind now, but there are times where just emotionally I'm trying to convey love, support, caring, and it's felt to her as like some kind of threat single. And I really do think that it's cultural. Sometimes I need a more specific example to give this comment some handles, but yeah.
I've seen it in relationships about communication and expectations.
Yeah.
You know, like you're saying, you're trying to demonstrate love. And I've seen it in other cultures where it's like, well, that's not how you do it. And it's offensive or oppressive, or men don't do it this way, or women don't do it this way, or whatever that situation may be. I also think, you know, with everything going on right now culturally, you know, with the protests and everything going up, and the opening up of racism and different things like that, of culture, and, you know, things that even if you're in a loving relationship, that doesn't necessarily mean you understand what your partner's going through or what they've gone through. And I think a lot of times people, in my experiences, I think people are afraid that if they don't know, that means they've failed their partner.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I'm learning, you know, and one of the things that I love too about this field and working with couples is we're always learning, we're always growing. Doing something like this, like even working with the three of you, is I feel I'm learning so much and growing, and I'm like, oh, I want to do that better, or they're so good, you know. It's knowing we can do better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think culture is just along the lines of everything else we're talking about, is what are those needs, slowing it down, figuring out how to express that. That's just my approach.
Mm-hmm.
And
I
being
don't know
open and curious. Open and curious about the
Yes.
other's experience. I think that's what all of us are learning right now in these times, right? Because there's things that we don't know that we don't know, right? So we need to be open to learn, and we need to create a safe environment for the other person to be able to share, so that we can learn. And we're going to make mistakes, we're going to stumble, right? But we need to have the courage to make those mistakes, own those mistakes, and repair those mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of brave conversations.
Yes.
Yeah, on this topic, I saw Scott Woolley, who's an EFT trainer. He did a really amazing live with a multiracial couple where the man was the man was white and the female was black, and there was like so many of their negative cycle triggers were when like he didn't know how to respond or understand her experience of microaggressions and feeling targeted in stores and like racism based stuff. And that topic is really important right now, given what's going on in our country. I even think more so because the four of us are all white, so it could be easy to pass this topic up. But Scott really did a good live in deepening her experience in a way that didn't like blame him for like being white and making him feel like he was causing her like fear and hypervigilance, and it was really powerful. Yeah, to make space for that part of their relationship in a new way that wasn't blame, attack, criticize, shame, withdraw.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like it was a beautiful session.
Yeah, sounds
it
powerful.
really-
And I know for myself, it's kind of walking that talk. I think sometimes clients come in and they have these situations and other ones that we've talked about, and they have that motivation for change. They want to do better, but they don't know how. They don't want to. Do I ask my partner all about this, or do I do this? Or I get this a lot too. Is like I should know better. And sometimes even giving those gentle resources of, thank goodness for the internet, of we can look up stuff, and for people, we can refer books or we can read books. And for people who don't like to read books, there are YouTube videos and there are Audible books now. And so there's so many great ways to be able to figure out, all right, how do I grow on this? How do I learn about this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that goes back to what you said, Patrick, about how there's like there isn't a lot of relationship education in schools, right? They're teaching about plants and earthquakes and other topics in like first grade, but they're not talking about relationship education. And sometimes no one has good modeling for relationships, just like you said.
Yeah. I mean, I think about my experience of, you know, what I was taught is that you grow up and, you know, you have a marriage and you have ups and downs, but then that's what you do. It's like, well, there is so much more to that. It was almost like the secret thing of no one wanted to talk about. And I think now, luckily in 2020, it's like, hey, let's break that out and break this up, because that mold does not work for us. And it doesn't work for our people and our clients. I actually just got an email that someone was asking for our insight, if it's all right if I share it with you, just kind of along the topics. They're saying, this is a woman, my husband cheated a little over a year ago. We separated for 2 months and then came back together and chose to work on our marriage together. We've been doing pretty well, but I still find there are times where my guard is up and my mind goes back to what we went through. We're working on building the trust back up, but there are still times where I question him. It's not that I don't trust him, but deep down my gut tells me that he's being truthful. But I don't want to not be cautious. Do you have any tips to work through that and stop myself from reflecting on what happened and focus on building our relationship back up? We also have a 4-year-old child together.
Yeah, my heart goes out to her. Those are very, very painful experiences in a relationship. Very painful, and the echoes of that last a long time, right? And I think the key is when she feels that shift inside of her, where she starts to feel cautious, if her wall goes up or whatever that shift is inside of her, that she go to her husband and she talk about, I just got afraid, I just got worried, right? And say to him, my gut tells me you're being sincere and genuine, but my heart just went back to that place where I felt a lot of danger, right? And see if he can reassure her and respond.
You know, I really like your description, Marcia. The echo is going to be echo throughout the relationship. That's, I think, a very apt description. And so to hear that piece and for her to be able to recognize those emotional hooks when she feels that little pull. So really being mindful and present, so she's not allowing herself to get reeled in by it and let her emotion kind of drive her. You know, she wants to hopefully be at a place where she can sit with her own discomfort, be present, try to understand it, and then choose to have that dialogue with him, right? To be responsive to him, as you're saying, Marcia, to really share with him what her experience is, what she's thinking, feeling. Reducing the risk that she becomes reactive, and then that becomes a behavioral piece in their relationship.
Which is very disconnecting, and what she's really needing is reassurance and connection.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't know if you see this, but a lot of times when I've seen a rupture in a relationship like this, and they're actively working on building trust and building that emotional safety, is when the partner who's been cheated on has sort of like a relapse, or has a, you know, like an EMDR would be like, was a trigger, like they have that trauma coming up. How many times the discussion turns to the other partner gets angry.
Yep.
Yeah.
And okay, so you want me to come and tell you when I'm safe or when I'm scared or when I'm not, but you're getting angry because I'm not doing it on your timeline. You hear that phrase a lot of, well, how long are you going to punish me for this?
Right, exactly.
Right. And I don't know if any of you have ever seen that as well. It's hard because underneath that, you see the pain. One's dealing it with anger and the other one's dealing it with fear, but just that I'm so scared and I don't know how to not get drowned in this.
Right. Well, and the partner who was the one who had the affair, who responds with anger, why can't we get past this? There's a lot of pain in there too, which is fear of what if we never get past this, right? Sadness, and maybe some shame and some hurt for being the one who injured their spouse, right? So slowing that anger down and saying what's underneath that, so that that person, that injuring partner, can be able to share that those feelings with their partner, because that's the vulnerable place that says, I really wish I didn't do this. I hate the idea that I hurt you. right? The injured partner needs to hear that from that vulnerable place. That's healing.
Yeah, especially if it's a committed relationship. Both partners are hurt by what one partner did. I like what everyone said. I don't have that much more to.
No, I like what you said. Both partners are hurt by what one partner did.
Right. Yeah.
The other piece I think that's really, really important is that what happened before that incident, the affair? What happened? Because there was something going on where they were misattuned. And that really needs to be addressed in the process, because you can't just heal from an affair if you don't heal the relationship and where it was, what was missing before that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's I think, as you're saying, Marcia, certainly in moments, an affair may be a symptom of a problem in a relationship. And I'm not discounting the person who chooses to have the affair, their choice in that process. Yet to look at it globally, what is the nature, what's the health of this relationship prior to the decision to step outside of the couple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And my experience is the person who does decide to step outside of the relationship is doing so because they're so desperate, and they have tried so many times in so many ways that they know how to reconnect, and they can't do it. So on some level, they just give up and they go outside of the relationship because they just don't know what else to do, and they're in such pain and so lonely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
That's hard, because that fear, it almost is swallows the people up, because they don't want to get hurt again. And I've seen it where, that fear of I don't want to get hurt again, but underneath that, if you dig a little bit deeper, is I'm also really scared of losing you.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I can forgive this, but that I'm terrified that I'm going to end up alone, because I didn't even know this was happening.
Right.
Anybody want to add anything else to that one before we?
There are many, many emotions, right? Because then the partner who's been injured feels what's wrong with me? Why am I not enough?
Right.
Right. And there's so many along the way, there's so many missed signals, right? Scrambled messages for connection that went back and forth that got missed and misunderstood. So a lot of work there in healing that. But the most important thing is the genuine desire to make it work.
Right. And I think I'm going to go back to something that Bobbi was saying about how couples change and evolve. I've seen that so often when children are all of a sudden in the picture, and parents, I've heard it from so many couples where they will say, well, our children should be our priority. Our children should be our priority. But if that relationship deteriorates, those kids are going to be gone one day. And then you get that empty nest syndrome. And then I'm married to someone 20 years ago and I don't know who they are.
Yeah, totally.
And even in the pandemic, I try to encourage try some way to have some sort of quality time, even if it's just 3 minutes or 5 minutes of, hey, I missed you today. Or I saw this joke and I thought, it doesn't, when we talk about intimacy, I don't feel, it doesn't always have to be problems. It can be, that clown you like, or those, little Debbie snacks, I saw them today and it just made me smile, or, something like that of rekindling and making that love just grow even more.
Yeah. And especially with kids, like I've seen a research study that I can't remember the authors, but they were talking about how the quality of the couple relationship not only sets the stage of the like what the children learn about relationships, but it also plays a really big role in the self-esteem development of each child, the couple relationship, even more than how each parent treats their children. So like if you care about your family and your children, you need to really invest and care for your couple relationship as well.
Yeah. So as we wind down today, I just want to thank everyone who wrote in questions, who wrote on Facebook. And once again, thank you to the three of you spending this quality time with me on your Saturdays. I appreciate it. And just for people who are watching, I will be posting the video if you weren't able to watch it live, and I'll be putting everyone's contact information. So if these people are in your area and you have further questions, you can get a hold of them and, you know, be able to reach out to them. And as we end today, I guess I'll just ask one last question. Is there one piece of advice or one thing that each one of you would recommend to our couples listening today?
My biggest recommendation is to learn to slow yourself down and look in your heart and find out what it's saying to you, right? What physical body sensations are coming up for you? What message is in there for you? Because that's going to not only help you in your relationship, but it's going to help you manage in your whole life. There's so much information in there that goes so fast that we miss, that we need to know about so we can respond in healthy ways.
Yeah. And to add to what Marcia's saying, that there's in every opportunity, there's in every crisis there's opportunity. There's the word in Chinese, the word crisis and opportunity are very similar, and I think that they're written the same. They're not the same word, obviously, but I think that this pandemic and the social unrest and just everything going on, it is a big growth moment for couples, and for couples to like take risks, investing in their relationship, doing workshops, going to therapy, because like end of the day, what's more important than relationships? Like when you're in your last days, like what do you think really matters? So like don't be scared to invest money, invest time in workshops, therapy, because relationships matter more than anything. Quality of relationships is the quality of life.
And I think, when we talk about those moments in life, I kind of call them the little chia seed moments, the moments that kind of bind, those little moments that kind of create that connection. Something so small and tiny can kind of create this nurturing bond. And so being mindful of that and those things, whether it's you sit next to your partner, you like Patrick said, you see something, you smile about them, you think about them. It doesn't have to be big things, trips and time away. It can be those little tiny moments that create those connections and the bond. So be mindful of those little moments.
Yeah. And I think I would just say never be afraid to change and challenge yourselves in a relationship, and know that your partner does love you and does care about you, and being able to challenge yourself of being vulnerable with your partner and putting those needs out there is difficult, but you're both worth it. And I think, once again, going back to what I was saying, whenever you reach out, like Jason was saying, whether it's a workshop, whether it's a class, whether it's an online seminar, we as counselors really appreciate the courage and the bravery it takes for you to reach out. And I think I can speak for the four of us. I think we do the best we can to meet you where you're at and help you on your journey. But we do appreciate that bravery of picking up that phone, because we know it's not easy. So you're really, really brave.
Yeah.
And thank you so much again for all being here. And it's been a pleasure working with you today.
Thanks for having us, Patrick.
All right. Have a great weekend. Stay safe. Stay safe, everyone who's watching.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.